Generating traffic and sales can be a challenge for online merchants. But selling on the Walmart Marketplace puts your products in front of millions of customers who shop on Walmart.com. And right now, sellers who join Walmart Marketplace can save up to 50% on referral and fulfillment fees for the first 90 days. So get started today. Head over to marketplace.walmart.com/savings. That's marketplace.walmart.com/savings. Welcome to Ecommerce Conversations, a weekly podcast from Practical E-commerce, hosted by entrepreneur Eric Bandholz.
What is going on, Internet? Eric Bandholz back again with another E-commerce Conversations. I hope all is going well on the other side of the Internet. On the other side of the Internet from me, Bryant. What's up, man?
What's up? Good to see you.
Great to see you. We grabbed dinner a few weeks ago with Aaron Orendorff, who was also on the podcast. And I met him for the first time, and it sounded like what you guys are going through is pretty similar to what we've been going through. So I thought we're in for a pretty interesting conversation. But why don't you give our listeners a real quick recap of who the heck you are?
Yeah. What's up, everybody? My name is Bryant Jaquez. I'm a serial CMO turned CEO. I'm the CEO of a brand called BuddyLove, which is a women's apparel company based out of Dallas, Texas. And my background is in D2C. I've worked in the industry for 10 years. But up until 4 weeks ago, I was leading marketing teams. And I just recently jumped on board an up-and-coming fashion startup, taking the reins as their CEO.
Let's talk about what that is like, because I think a lot of our listeners want to hire a CEO at some point. As a person coming into that role, what do you look for in various roles? Like, what is a good opportunity versus a not so good opportunity?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, but I can start sort of with my background briefly, and then just talk generally about the role and what I've experienced. I think anyone who's a CEO at a D2C company specifically has to also be an entrepreneur. And I've always been entrepreneurial. I found myself in a stage of my career where I wanted to, usually I'm the second in command type person and more of an entrepreneur than an entrepreneur, I guess. But that personality has to be there. You have to like to grow. You have to be a builder. You have to be obsessed with your work and love it. Like, there's no work-life balance, when you're running a startup. So maybe there's a little bit, but that entrepreneurial spirit has to exist. And then I think you also have to be ready to take on all of the stress and responsibility of running an entire company. I have the benefit of having run a P&L just in the marketing org over the last 10 years that is larger than our current total revenue. I've run pretty large teams throughout my career and have helped build startups. Usually I come in right around product market fit. Like the first couple of companies that I helped scale, I came in around 2 million and helped one of them go from 2 to 20 in a couple of years. And the next one went from 2 to 80 in a couple of years. And then I joined Caden Lane, which was where I was working before I jumped over here when they were much larger, and helped them scale up closer to 9 figures. But I think you have to, if you're going to hire a CEO, you have two choices. You can either hire somebody who has way more experience than the size of company you're at being a CEO somewhere else, which is going to be expensive. And this company couldn't afford that. So I kind of got lucky, to be honest. I'm friends with the founders of this brand. And, we started a friendship over a D2C supper club, actually, a meetup here in the DFW area, and just stayed in touch over time. And it turned into an opportunity for both of us. The founders were at a point in their career where they didn't want to be the CEO anymore. When our company was started by two founders, it's a husband-wife team, Buddy and Grayson DeFonso. They're both amazing and incredible at what they do. Grayson designs all of our clothes, so she's the creative director. And Buddy was running the ops, and he got to the point where he just didn't want to. And he was honest with himself about that, and he approached me and asked if I would be interested in joining the team, which I was, because I was also in the place of my career where I was running into the I don't know, it's not quite a glass ceiling, but there's limitations to how much you can grow as a CMO. You're either working towards an exit, which you're probably going to get replaced when a P company comes in and acquires you, or I guess you can be the CMO at a bigger and bigger company and over time, grow. But I realized that I was going to have to either run something or start something to continue to reach, turn my career into something that I was happy with. So it was just good timing, right time, right place, I guess.
So I don't like getting into numbers too much, so don't feel an obligation to tell me all the numbers. But what I heard from that is you come in when the company's just hit this product market fit, a couple $1 million, and you're able to scale it up to 8 or 9 figures. Is that the same situation that you see with the current company, or is it a little bit different than?
Yeah, no, I can share it publicly. So BuddyLove hit 14 million last year. So it's quite a bit smaller than the brands that I'm coming from, but it's big enough to have, like, we have money, to play with. So it's big enough to grow quickly. Now, what I can share is BuddyLove is in a very similar position that a lot of D2C brands are in now, post-pandemic, post-ZERP era. They took on a lot of investment. They took on a lot of debt. They made some big bets with inventory and cash flow. And when the company was doubling year over year, multiple years in a row, everyone thought they'd be fine. And that, the interest payments and the debt that they took on wasn't going to catch up to them, or at least that they'd be able to outgrow it. And then, like most brands that I know, they had a much slower year last year than the previous ones. So a lot of those expenses and debt services did catch up to them. So now we're cleaning up the balance sheet, and the focus is definitely on profitability and scaling way back to the point where we're running a very lean, very profitable company. So my first couple of weeks in the job, what has been a lot of restructuring teams and evaluating expenses, making cuts, pretty deep cuts, some that were painful. Unfortunately, some included a round of layoffs that let people go. There was a number of agencies. We restructured all of our software and just really reduced our overhead and our burn to, my first goal was to get default alive, which happened within a couple of weeks. And then we continue to look for places to save. I think I've been with the team 5 weeks now. We've cut over $1 million of expenses. There's another around 700,000 that we're evaluating that will probably be able to take off the P&L, which makes already the company is set up to have its most profitable year in the last 13 years, which Grayson and Buddy launched the brand 13 years ago out of a back office of a showroom at the Dallas wholesale market. Grayson started designing clothes and started walking around and selling them. And she's very good at designing clothes and really good at selling them. So, it worked. So we're already set up to have our most profitable year in history, but it's going to take a year or two to really restructure everything internally that needs to be restructured. So I have my work cut out for me. And as a team, we have a lot of work ahead of us, but it's fun. It is the most challenging thing I've ever done. And the most the stress and the pressure going from CMO to CEO surprised me. I thought I was good at handling pressure. And when I, jumped on board here and started digging into the numbers and figuring out, exactly what we need to restructure, it took me a couple of weeks to catch my breath, to be honest. And so that was an adjustment. I think, I'm doing the thing that most CMOs want to do, which is either run something or start something. And I had assumptions that it would be easier than it actually is. Um, I'm happy to report that it's working. Our D2C growth is up 35% over the last 28 days. And we're doing it more profitably than we've ever done it with a leaner team. And we're sort of just rebuilding, the
Yeah.
brand from the inside out.
I,
We're keeping the soul intact. Like Grayson's designs aren't changing, but the way things run, are being reimagined.
yeah. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about that transition where you came in as the CEO. You said you've only been there for 5 weeks, but you're friends with them, so I assume you kind of knew about the business already and what they were going through, or like, was there like a interview process, or was there like a proposal? You're like, here's what I'm going to do when I come in as CEO, and or walk me through like those kind of expectations that you had with the founding team.
Yeah, there was conversations that lasted a couple of months. So Buddy brought up the idea in Q4 of last year, and I was honest. I was happy at Caden Lane. Like it's a great company, and I'm still friends with the founder over there. And they're an amazing team, which I told Buddy, I was like, hey, look, I'm happy where I'm at, but at some point I do want to start or run something, and I'm interested in the conversation. So I let him know that we should continue the conversation and explore it and find out like what he wants and see if it lined up with what I was looking for. And he gave me access to take a look at some of their data, and there was a lot of opportunity to scale and reimagine the way they were doing marketing. So those chats lasted a couple of months. Now there's, and Buddy is a very transparent, very open character, personality. So he was honest with me, and I knew as much as I could have known what I was jumping into. But the business is unique in that it has three business models rolled up into one, which is surprising for the size that we're at. But the company started as a wholesale business. So it's still up until last year, about 50% of its revenue was driven through wholesale contracts. We're in over 1,000 small boutique stores throughout the South and Southeast. And the business had the DNA of a wholesale brand. They also have retail locations that are owned retail. Our flagship store is here in Dallas. It's just a few miles from our warehouse. And then they have D2C, but the D2C side of the business is the newest part of the business. It's where the most growth is happening. It's where there's the most opportunity. Everyone listening to this podcast knows everything they need to know about D2C, but that's where all the scale is coming from. But it's also the part of the business that their team didn't have the expertise to lead or lean into that growth, which is why he was interested in partnering with me. The books, once I jumped in and realized how the wholesale business works, I realized how volatile it is, especially when you're working with small wholesale accounts like Women's Boutique in Bentonville, Arkansas, for example. It's just a lot of small towns, small businesses. A lot of them had a hard year last year. They come and go. Sometimes they're passion projects, and then a person gets bored with their passion and just shuts down the brand, and they'll never order from you again. Like it's hard to depend on some of that revenue. So they were basing projections off of historical trends. And even in January of this year, some of the wholesale accounts that they were expecting to place large orders ended up deciding they just weren't going to. And it made the already challenging cash flow position even more challenging. That was a surprise to all of us. And that's business. And that happens, obviously. I mean, that's just part of the game. But when I joined, which was the second week of January, so my last day at my last role was the last day of last year. Then I took a week vacation with my wife and our 6 kids. We went to Colorado and went snowboarding. And then the second Monday of January, I started with BuddyLove. And immediately we realized that things were going to be a lot harder, a lot faster than we were expecting. So it really required that everyone roll up their sleeves and just figure out how to make it work. And we're still figuring it out.
Well, I wanted to kind of pick on like how did so Buddy is, we'll call him like the former CEO, right? Is he still showing up in the office? Is there like weird power dynamics that are happening? Like talk about like how the meetings are run and how that transition. I'm really interested in knowing like what that transition looked like as you came in and as he steps out.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I have been very impressed with Buddy. There is no power dynamics, and I guess each founder would have to know he's playing the role of business owner and founder. So he's still in the office every day. We actually share an office. One of the biggest rooms in our warehouse was converted into an office where my desk is on one side of the room, his desk is on the other side of the room, and there's couches and chairs and coffee tables in the middle of the room. It's essentially a conference room with a TV to project screens and whiteboards, and it's sort of like our war room now. So we share an office. We work together every day. He stepped into the role of more like business owner slash he took a leading role in the wholesale team when we realized that wholesale was going to need more attention. It had a little bit of a distressed month in January. So Buddy's experience and background in wholesale made him the perfect candidate to work every day with our wholesale reps and wholesale accounts to just call up stores. And we launched a new region in Atlanta a couple of weeks ago. He loaded up a van with product and drove 15 hours and drove through the night to get there so we could set up a showroom in Atlanta and start selling product, which it was a successful launch. And then he's also bringing his experience of running the company for 13 years to serve as an advisor and a coach for me, because it's going to take time. I mean, I think at a normal job, it takes 3 months to onboard. If you're stepping into an executive role, you need at least a year in the job, living and breathing, the role for a year before you fully understand everything that you need to know. So Buddy's playing the role of coach slash head of the wholesale team.
Yeah.
And my advice to founders who are interested in hiring a CEO is make sure you know why you want to hire a CEO. He was honest with himself that he didn't like the job and didn't want to do it anymore. And that takes self-awareness. And so there's no power dynamics of him trying to be the CEO because he sincerely didn't want it. Now, if somebody wants it, or if they have a more controlling personality, or if they're a micromanager, or like most of the people who I've worked for would not have hired a CEO. And if they had, that CEO would have quit because most founders like being the CEO. And even if they hired somebody, that person would feel so controlled that there'd be no point to them being there. That was not the case here. But he actually wanted to hand the reins to somebody. And we've been rebuilding the strategy as a D2C first brand, where historically we were a wholesale first company. So Buddy's still running the wholesale division, and I'm taking the reins on everything else. Grayson is still designing the clothes. She's the creative director, so she gets to do what she likes to do. And neither one of them have to do the things that they didn't like to do. With finances and projections and planning and organizing teams and that stuff I like to do.
So you came in with the axe, and you were the man handling those meetings.
Yep.
That's a
which
fun
was
way to start. Yeah, I mean,
yeah, it was. I had the advantage of being new,
but it's also like got to be hard to like earn your team's trust if you come in and have to let go a lot of people.
Yeah, it was tough. That the day we did layoffs was one of the hardest days of my career. I believe in over-indexing on honesty, and like I'm a high care, high honest communicator. Where have you ever seen those charts? I'll try to paint a picture with words since this is an audio channel, but If you imagine an axis where there's truth on one of the axes and care on the other one, you can chart each quadrant as like you want to be high care and high trust. And those are the kinds of leaders that people want to follow. If you're low care and low trust, or low honesty and low care, you're essentially a politician. Or if you're high truth but low care, you're a jerk. Like you're an honest jerk, but you're a jerk and no one likes you.
I love those
Or
people. I like those people.
hey, there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, I'd rather have an honest jerk than a jerk who's a liar.
Yeah.
The other quadrant is someone who cares a lot but is not honest, and that's like the sugar coater. So as often as possible, I try to be as honest, like more honest than anyone is used to experiencing, and care a lot about people. So it took me a few days to dig into the books. Then I called the entire team together and I just told everybody the situation. I was like, hey, look, this is where we're at. This is the path ahead of us. It's going to be painful. We're going to have to make cuts. We have to get profitable. We have to get default alive. I explained what that meant.
What
and
does
then I
default
painted a
alive
picture.
mean?
It just means your burn is less than your income. Like you have to make more money than you're spending.
Yeah.
And any brand that was venture backed, that wasn't the case. And a lot of brands that took out debt and then the interest payments caught up to them, that's not the case. So I've had a few all staff meetings since being here that were just I gathered everyone around and told them what was going on and let them ask questions. And to be honest, those meetings have been a mix of emotions, including tears and frustration and fear. And as long as every time you say you're going to do something, it happens. And when I laid people off, I tried to do it the way I would want it to be done to me, which included, letting people go and then trying to help them find opportunities as quickly as possible. So that day I posted on Twitter, it's like, hey, these are the roles we let go. Is anyone looking to recruit for any of these roles? And within 24 hours, I had opportunities for everyone who we let go who wanted them. There were a few people who were pretty upset who just didn't respond, to my attempts to connect them, but that's okay.
How big was the team, and where are you guys at?
We were around 40 employees, and now we are around 24, I believe, or 25.
Yeah.
And
doing fulfillment in-house?
We do fulfillment in-house, and there's a lot of part-time employees for the retail side of the business, and then a few wholesale reps. The design team, there's a few people in ops and finance, and then a pretty small creative and marketing team, and that's it. So I like to run around. I know these are like sort of vanity numbers because it doesn't necessarily mean the same thing to every brand, but most of the companies that I've been at have run around $1 million earnings per employee. And I was able to bring our ratio to 500,000 earnings per employee, which you can still run a profitable company at that. Anything below that is, questionable. Like you probably can't be profitable if your earnings to employee ratios, too far from the 500,000 bench line. So that's what we did. We brought it down to that number.
Now, I want to talk about, every other entrepreneur I talk to wants to hire the person who came into that $2 million company and got it to 20 million, or, your kind of resume. What does it take to, obviously you and Buddy had a relationship and a connection, but honestly speaking, what does it take to bring on someone of your caliber talent? And then how do you also make sure they were the person who did that growth versus being part of a team that they didn't really do the growth?
Yeah.
They just...
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. That's impossible to guarantee. I can speak to the first question. Equity, skin in the game. I structured I'm one of those personalities that's like wildly impractical when I dream, and then I over index on efficiency and practicality when I'm executing. So on the dreaming half of my brain, I took inspiration from Elon's story of creating like way out of the money, improbable outcomes and structured an equity agreement out of hitting different milestones in revenue and profitability. And every time we hit a milestone, it unlocks more equity for me. But right off the bat, I was in a better position than the one I left. So to the simple answer is find out what the compensation plan looks like for the person you're trying to recruit and make your offer much better than that. And probably, that's enough to pique their interest. As well as you have to make sure you're aligned on exit plan and your 5 to 10 year goals of like what kind of a company do you want to run? What are you wanting to sell? Are you just wanting to grow the company to the point where it's generating millions in cash flow and take dividends for a decade or two until you eventually sell? Or you have to make sure you're aligned with the goals there, which we are. So that worked out. And the second part of your question, I think it's hiring anyone is a risk. And hiring a CEO is probably one of the riskiest things you can do. The story that I told Buddy, which I believe to be true, but obviously, like, I don't know how much of my leadership was a factor in the growth of every company that I've been at. Every company I've been at has grown significantly. And what I tell people is I accelerated something that was already happening, but I wasn't the cause of it. Obviously, growth is a team sport. It's everything in business is collaborative. I have been at enough companies. Like the first marketing job I had was for a startup, and I helped them go from 0 to 2 million, and then the next was the 2 to 20, and then 2 to 80, and then Caden Lane doesn't like it when people talk about their finances publicly. So it was more to a lot more. And in between all of those experiences, I also have worked with over 100 companies on a consulting role. At one point, I worked for a storytelling consultancy where we would travel around and teach marketing teams at like Google and Atlassian and Adobe and like big tech companies how to do better marketing using storytelling. So I've been doing literally just this thing and nothing else for 13 years. And even if I wasn't the reason why all the growth happened, you still get good at things that you do when that's the only thing that you do for so long. So at least they had, the benefit of knowing that I know the playbook. I've been around fast growth startups and specifically in D2C long enough that even if I wasn't the one running every play, I still have known the play. And when I say I'm obsessed with this stuff, it's like, I didn't watch the Super Bowl a few days ago because I don't care. And that makes me weird, I guess. Or like I have my family, I have a couple of friends, and then I have this, and that's it. That's not it. I have my faith, I have there's other intrinsic stuff. But as far as what I spend my time doing, I've only done this for over 10 years, even that I stay up to way later than I should in bed reading Twitter and blog posts and newsletters and have, read thousands of hours of books. And all I do is learn. And for fun, I drive to Austin to go to dinner with people like you so I can maybe learn one more thing, over steak and drinks. So I think if you're going to hire a CEO who is a CEO for the first time, they have to have a quality set similar to that. The other way to do it is hire a CEO who's been a CEO for a while and they've proven themselves in that role. And if you have the money to support that, that's probably the safer bet. So I'd recommend that.
What does the compensation of a CMO at a rapidly growing company look like? Because you said you have to be more than that or more appealing than that.
Uh, that was, uh, I guess it's different. Multiple six figures,
Okay.
obviously, is what I was coming from, and
But no
bonus
equity.
opportunities. So this is actually really helpful for founders to hear. So I had an equity option at Caden Lane that would execute at the point of a liquidation event. So and I appreciated that. The founder over there was generous in the equity that she offered me. Um, and I think, if you're a CEO or a founder thinking about how to structure an equity deal, this will help you think through that. The founder was the majority. I mean, she's the only, technically the only equity shareholder of the company, and she controlled whether or not there would ever be a liquidation event. And she was very public about this in 2022, I believe it was. Um, Maybe it was 2021. She turned down an offer to sell for 100 million. So she had already demonstrated the ability to walk away from a life-changing amount of money, and she controlled whether or not she would ever sell. And then she offered me equity that would only be worth anything. Like, I wasn't going to get distributions or anything. Like, it would only be worth something in the case of an exit. And then also, because the company was growing so fast and having as much success as it was, uh, there was a conversation of this current state of private equity and venture backed companies in D2C. Like, it hasn't been good for the last couple of years. So there was a conversation of, well, maybe the company will just grow to the point where nobody will want to acquire us, and we'll just have to start acquiring companies, which I think is the right conversation to have. And is the logical, questions to ask when a company starts to hit certain sizes. Um, but all of that built up to a decision that I had to make, which was my equity was essentially monopoly money because it didn't mean anything unless we sold, and I had no control over whether or not we'd sell. And I traded that and the security of that job for taking a chance on a smaller company that came with real equity, immediately, and more compensation also immediately, which helped. But in startups, there's no guarantee that a $14 million company is going to become a $100 million company. So I'm also taking a risk, and my personality is risky. So that works for me. It might not work for everybody, but I do think that founders and CEOs should consider the message that their equity structure sends to their employees, because it might not be the incentive that they're hoping for.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, like I'm trying to build a business that I pass on to my kids, like a multi-generational business. So
Cool.
so there is never going to be, as far as I'm planning or hoping, there's never going to be that liquidation event. So for me, bringing on a CEO for equity, it's like I don't see much of a difference between like profit sharing and equity in this case, because it's like, eventually one day
Yeah.
I'm going to pass it on to my kids or my business partner's kids or my grandkids or something like that. Do you think you would be open to something like that, like a profit sharing thing where it's essentially like distributions or like ownership, but you don't have any of that equity?
I think a lot of people would.
Okay.
That's not what I was looking for, but depending on the stage of someone's career. So if you were to hire a CEO, you would have to choose between hiring a CEO with a lot of experience who probably has equity somewhere else, and a CEO, or someone like me who's had a different role at a similar company, but was ready to take on a new challenge. So if a CMO or a chief product officer or a CFO or whoever at another D2C brand was willing to leave their current position for profit share because profit share was better, then of course. And I think not every job is the last job that someone's going to have, nor should it be. Like, very few people take a job thinking that they're going to die in that role. So, most jobs are like a tour of duty, or it's somehow a way for them to advance their career as they ladder from one opportunity to the next. And most people should do that, I think. I mean, that's my opinion. So if you had a CEO who was only taking profit share, you're probably not going to keep them as long as a CEO that has equity. It may be somebody else wants multi-generational wealth that they can pass down to their kids. And if they can't get that with you, then they should find it somewhere else. That's, pragmatically, that's fine. But if you find somebody where that opportunity is much better than the one they're coming from, then sure, that could be a win-win.
Yeah. Where can people follow you on Twitter or X? Buy your clothes?
Yeah, I know. I still follow Twitter. So if you want to go shopping, go to BuddyLove.com. We're women's apparel. It's all Southern and sassy, fashion brand. And if you want to follow me on X, it's just my name, Bryant Jaquez. It's a funny spelling, but it's Bryant spelled like Kobe, and then my last name is Jaquez. You can look me up on there.
Sweet, man. Well, thanks for swinging by. This has been another e-commerce conversations. I hope everyone enjoyed this as much as me and learned a thing or two. Yeah, man, it's been good.
Thanks. Yeah, happy to be here.
Cheers.
Bye, guys.
Keep on growing.